Welcome to my video this morning. Welcome to my channel. I'm Scott Stenson. On this channel, I like to look at the Holy Scriptures and look at prophetic teachings. Today, what I thought we could look into, and this came up over the weekend for me when I was reading Alma 37, I thought we could look at the 24 gold plates, or the record of ether, the plates of ether, and kind of tie them into the other kind of source materials that are influencing the Book of Mormon. And so the Book of Mormon is very complicated, and structurally it's complicated, and in terms of sources that are influencing the text, it's complicated. But I hope to just ultimately lay out a context for those sources, and then spend a little bit of time tracing the 24 gold plates through the record and kind of making some observations about that. Now, this is not a subject I have given exhaustive attention to, but since the weekend I've been thinking about it a little bit more, and so let me just lay out a couple of things that might be of use. One is that in the forepart of our current Books of Mormon, we have a discussion of the plates that one might look for when they're reading the Book of Mormon. The plates of Nephi, which would involve the large plates of Nephi and the small plates of Nephi. Now, those plates are significant, and I'll say why in just a second. But Mormon uses, when he develops his own plates, the plates of Mormon, which are the second item here in the forepart of our Books of Mormon, Mormon uses the large plates of Nephi to make his record. In other words, he abridges, for his portion of the Book of Mormon, he abridges the large plates of Nephi. And so his plates are the plates that Joseph inherits, called the gold plates. We call them the gold plates that were buried in the hill Cumorah. Now, also on this same list are the plates of ether, which is what I want to track today in this video. And then the plates of brass, which of course is a record that was obtained by Lehi and his family at the forepart of their journey as they exited Jerusalem. And some have said that particular record was a record coming from the north, or from Israel. So it had a special interest in Joseph. In any case, it's a record that was in Jerusalem in about 600 BC, and they obtained it, and there's stories of it and the acquisition of it in the forepart of First Nephi. And that's one of the most interesting aspects of the Book of Mormon. It's a book that isn't just Scripture itself, but it actually helps us appreciate how Scripture is formed, how Scripture develops, how it transmits across generations, how it's first put down. And so the Book of Mormon is a record of how Scriptures are made. Unlike the Bible doesn't really have this reflexive element to it, but the Book of Mormon has a real, almost self-conscious focus on its own origin story, its own creation. It is reflexive in that way, but it also has a transmission that's documented throughout the whole of it. So the Book of Mormon is this rare glimpse into how Scriptures are actually made, how they're produced, how they're received, how they're passed down, how they're created, and so forth. Okay, now for today's video, I thought I would go over the dictation order of the Book of Mormon just to refresh our memories, and then talk about these 24 gold plates, or the record of ether. All right, so first of all, in terms of the dictation story, Joseph Smith dictates the Book of Mormon to his scribes, or excuse me, he dictates the full Book of Mormon in a very short span of time. And scholars, debate that time frame. They debate exactly the nature of the translation. None of that's of interest to me at all. I'm interested in the content of the book myself. In any case, he translates the Book of Lehi, first of all. So in terms of dictation order, Book of Lehi is first, which apparently contained a history of the family of Lehi from their departure from Jerusalem all the way through King Benjamin. But that is eventually, as we know from church history, and as referenced in, I think it's section 10 of the Doctrine and Covenants, that portion of the overall record was translated by Joseph Smith, but ultimately lost by Martin Harris and his family, his wife being a part of that. Now, whether it was lost or stolen, none of that is of interest to me at all. But we did lose this, Book of Lehi, which is highly unfortunate, except the Lord had, in his providences, made plans for that. Of course, we learn in the book, in the Doctrine and Covenants, that he foresaw this and had prepared a parallel record, even a greater record, one that would cast greater views upon the gospel of Christ, even than the Book of Lehi did. And so the small plates of Nephi are going to be inserted later. Mormon discovers them. They're inserted finally by Moroni into the overall account and so forth. And I'll I'll wrap that up in just a second. So first of all, Book of Lehi. Then, apparently, Mosiah so we have the abridgment of Mormon of the large plates of Nephi from Mosiah all the way down to the Book of Mormon itself, which is a smaller record within the larger Book of Mormon. So much of that book, all the way. So Mormon closes out his work, and then he passes the plates of Mormon. So his abridgment finished about towards the end of the Book of Mormon. And Moroni his son picks up, and concludes that book that is named after his father, a smaller book named after his father, and he closes out that book, and he inserts his own abridgment of what we're interested in for this video, which is the record of Ether. He abridges that record, and now that record was a much longer account, but he abridges it significantly, and his commentary is quite extensive throughout the Book of Ether. We almost don't get much of the Jaredite story because of his editorial comments towards his modern-day Gentile reader. And then Moroni, after he closes out his father's overall record, he abridges the Book of Ether, and then he writes his own small book. It's called the Book of Moroni. It's the last book. And then, apparently, this is how I understand it. Maybe I'm not quite understanding here everything. But he adds the very last leaf of the plates that Joseph inherited before the sealed portion of the overall record is a title page that he inserts, or that he prepares as the last leaf of the plates. And Moroni apparently is the author of the title page. And then, of course, after this, which is not translated, we have the sealed portion of the record. And all of this is what Joseph obtained when he went to the hill and brought back the plates to begin the translation of the... So he dictates that in that particular order, as I understand it. Now what I'm interested in for this video are these plates of Ether. Okay, so first of all, let me say we get a discussion of seership in Mosiah chapter 8. The best discussion of seership and the gift of seership in all of the standard works is found in Mosiah chapter 8. Now, why does that matter? Because one of the things we learn about a seer isn't just someone who sees things or is, prophetic or even revelatory. Specifically, the Book of Mormon defines a seer as one who can look into interpreters to translate ancient records. And so that definition is extremely important, because in the Book of Mormon we have a record of seers translating ancient records and or having access to interpreters to translate ancient records. So that definition is an ancient definition, but it's also, we get the demonstration of that in the Book of Mormon stories and history itself, okay? So, for instance, the people of Limhi, when they're scouting, when they're trying to discover the land of Zarahemla, they end up entering into a land where they find ruins, and they find 24 gold plates, among other things. They bring them back to their colony, in the land of Lehi. Limhi is desperate to understand the records, but he can't understand the language of the records. And so he asks of Ammon, who's come down from Zarahemla with his men. He says, do you know of anybody who can translate records? Because we are eager to find out what is the cause of the destruction of these people. And so Ammon, the scout, sent down from Zarahemla to Limhi and his people, or to discover what had happened with those who had come out in the time of Zenith. Limhi learns that there is one who can translate records, and his name is Mosiah, and he's in Zarahemla. And so Limhi rejoices, and the people of Limhi ultimately are delivered, and their records are, there's a sharing of records that happens in the Book of Mosiah. But also we learn that, and this is in chapter 28 of Mosiah, we learn that Mosiah II, he translates, among other things that he does, he translates the 24 gold plates, or the record of ether that was discovered by Limhi's scouting party when they were searching for Zarahemla. Now it appears, now there's no commentary in that I know of in Mosiah 28 about the nature of that record, except that it was a record of a people who had been destroyed, and apparently they were translated in full at that time, and the people, well, let me say it this way. Apparently, much of it was translated at that time, and the people, were able to react to it, respond to it. Of course, it was a story of the fallen nation, so they were, that caused them to become reflective and so forth. The thing is, it's unclear to me exactly all that was discussed in that particular era, because we know that later on we'll get discussion of a great revelation of the brother of Jared, which was not to be revealed until after the time of the coming of the Lord. And so either there must have been a sealed portion to those 24 gold plates, or there are additional plates, because again, the brother of Jared wrote powerfully. He wrote in a language that was not known to the people, but he also wrote of all things from the beginning to the end of time. He saw all things. He was one of those special servants of the Lord that's been able to see that vision of all things from the beginning to the end. And he wrote of it. And that revelation was not to come forth until the coming of the Lord. So exactly, this party brought back 24 gold plates, but it's not clear to me exactly. There may have been additional records they brought back, or there may be a sealed portion, I'm guessing, of the 24 gold plates. Although how one can fit this massive revelation of all things into 24 plates is unclear to me. So there must have been other records. I'm just trying to tease that out myself. I really don't have answers in those areas, and I'm searching for more understanding in those areas. But it could have been additional records they brought back, or it could have been that the language was so concise. That language that was on the 24 gold plates was so concise that it was so wrought and so powerful, so torqued up, that it conveyed much through very few characters. Perhaps that's the case. I don't really know. But in any case, this is translated apparently, at least in part, if not in full. The people are able to react to it. Why this is interesting is because in Alma 37, which we read over the weekend for Come Follow Me in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in our meetings, we learn that Alma is transferring the records. Now see, Alma's the one who received the records from Mosiah. So Mosiah interpreted these things and then passed the records, all of the records, down to Alma. And I'm including in there, among them, the small plates of Nephi. Although some scholars don't think that Alma actually received the small plates of Nephi. I think he did. I think it's pretty clear that he did. Although there's some really good reasons to believe he didn't. I mean, that I'm aware of. Anyway, Alma receives the records that were once with King Benjamin, later with Mosiah, now they're with Alma, the high priest over the church. And Alma is now transferring these records to his son Helaman, and he's giving him exhortations and instruction relative to the record he's inheriting, or the records he's inheriting. And one of the things he tells Helaman is Okay, you can let these things go forth so far as in, discovering unto the people the works of darkness that were among the Jaredites. But what we don't want to go forward, and we cannot let go forward, are their oaths and their covenants and their secret combinations. Those things are not to be dispensed among the people, okay? Because that would lead to trouble. That would lead to their downfall. So to speak of their sins and their wickedness and their iniquities, yes, that's fine. In fact, we should always teach them to abhor iniquity, abhor sin, abhor these things. But as far as getting into the details of their works of darkness, getting into the details of their secret combinations, their covenants and their oaths, we're not going to do that. And so he's instructing Helaman, we're not doing that. Now, there's no evidence that that's been done in a previous generation, but Alma specifically for the first time, I think, is laying out, okay, what part of these 24 gold plates is appropriate to share with the people before the coming of the Lord, and what part of this record that's been translated by Mosiah is not appropriate to share with the people before the coming of the Lord. And so these 24 gold plates have at least those two things on them. It's a record of the Jaredites. It's an epic story of the Jaredites. And we never quite get the full story, by the way, because in the Book of Ether, which is the next thing I wanted to bring up, the Book of Ether, Moroni, who has the keys over the Book of Mormon, according to section 27 of the Doctrine and Covenants, Moroni drastically abridges the account of the Book of the Plates of Ether. And he says, because these things are had about the creation of the world all the way to the Tower of Babel, I'm not going to even go there and mention these things. I'm going to pick up from the Tower of Babel until the time of Ether, the final prophet among the Jaredites, before their utter destruction in the land northward, their final battles and so forth. So Ether is the final writer, or it's the Book of Ether. So he's recording this Jaredite history in some sense. But Moroni is abridging Ether's record drastically, and he's inserting many lengthy editorial comments meant for his modern reader, and therefore, in practice or in effect, we get very little of the Jaredite story because we get so much commentary by Moroni pertaining to the last days. And so he shares something from the record of Ether, but then he comments upon it fairly extensively. And so it's as if, this is what some of the scholars have indicated recently, and I think it's an interesting point. It's as if he's not really interested in the Jaredite history. What he's really interested in is how these things have application for the Gentiles in the last days. And so the scholars have called this the Christianizing of the text, because the Jaredites were not of the house of Israel, apparently. They were before the house of Israel was formed. And although Jared in his great vision learns of Jesus Christ, some scholars recently have said that Moroni is apparently Christianizing the Jaredite story, which, again, those of us who believe that, Christian principles and doctrines were all understood by Adam going forward, we just don't have enough in the book, in the record itself, to suggest that that's a good reading. It is true to say that the brother of Jared was a prayerful man. He entered the presence of Jesus Christ, or the premortal spirit of Jesus Christ. He was manifest to the brother of Jared as he would appear in the flesh, and so they are Christians. It's just that the record itself seems to be not to have a ton of evidence for that until Moroni inserts the very strong Christian elements into that Jaredite account. Now, I bring this up because Moroni is radically abridging the Jaredite record. And this is part of what he needs to do before he finishes out the overall record, because it was promised to us earlier in the Book of Mormon that these things would be made known to us. Now, they were never made known in the Book of Mosiah. They were just alluded to. But finally, we get the account. At least we get it in an abbreviated, abridged form through Moroni's instrumentality. Okay, so that's kind of complicated, but anyway, it's an epic story. We get part of it, but Moroni says I didn't include even 100th part of what was on the plates, and so we still don't have a clear idea of all that was on the 24 gold plates. But in addition to this, part of what Moroni adds to the Plates of Mormon, besides his own words to his father's record and his own book, and his abridgment of ether, or the plates of ether, is he adds to the Plates of Mormon, apparently, he transcribes this great vision of the brother of Jared, and this becomes the sealed portion of the gold plates inherited by Joseph Smith. And that must have been fairly lengthy, because Joseph Smith never commented upon the length of the sealed portion, apparently, but David Whitmer and Orson Pratt did, and they were associates and knew Joseph fairly well, quite well. And so they said that the sealed portion was either was probably as long as the original record, so half the size, or two-thirds of the size, so even more extensive than the actual Book of Mormon that we have today. And so the sealed portion, which is best discussed by Isaiah, and in 2 Nephi chapter 27, we get the reference to the sealed book and the book that can be translated, and how the book is given to the one who's learned and he's not going to read it, so the one who's unlearned is going to read it. The sealed portion of the Book of Mormon is discussed occasionally throughout the Book of Mormon, including 2 Nephi chapter 27. And then, so Moroni is the one who adds that transcription of the great revelation of the brother of Jared, or he may just transport the brother of Jared's writings, but he transcribes it apparently and places it upon the Plates of Mormon, apparently. This is at least according to one of my sources. He places that great vision on the Plates of Mormon, but it's a sealed part of the book, and Joseph was told not to open that seal until a later time. It can be translated at a later time when the people have the faith like unto the brother of Jared, have faith like unto the brother of Jared, then they can know of those things. Now, those things were made known among the Nephites in their golden era, because the idea was that Jared, the brother of Jared, wrote these things down. They were to come forth at the time, at the death of the Lord, after his ministry. They could come forth at that time. They came forth among the Nephites, and apparently it was part of their golden era. So for 200 years, they had access to these writings and this vision of the brother of Jared. But see, Moroni is the one who, again, seals that up and transcribes it, seals it up, places it on the Plates of Mormon. Now, that is not to be unsealed again until a day of similar righteousness or a day of similar faith. And then that vision can be fully made known. And again, so powerful are the words of the brother of Jared, according to Moroni, that it would be overpowering unto men to read them. So we look forward to that day when the greater things are made manifest. For now, we are given a lesser portion of the Word of God to try our faith, but the hope is that we'll develop faith unto the laying hold of the greater things that are yet to be revealed, that are not yet in our possession because they've been sealed, and now the angel has received the record again, and it never was translated for us. So these 24 gold plates have an interesting history. I just wanted to say as I close out today that many people, or some people, have said, the question's been raised about the Book of Mormon. Is this book of God, or is it of the devil? Now, I've thought about that a little bit recently again, and, I thought maybe it's because, it allows for Antichrist to speak and teach, and that's part of it for sure. Like Korihor gets coverage, and, Sherem gets a chance, and Nehor, they get a chance we get their doctrines through the Book of Mormon. So there's that element to the Book of Mormon. It exposes the enemies of Christ by literally giving them the stage for a moment, and then showing their demise or their execution or their confounding. And that's part of the picture we get in the Book of Mormon. But additionally, there are several things taught throughout the Book of Mormon, especially in the Book of Helaman and in the first part of 3rd Nephi, and especially in the Book of Ether, where we get this abridgment of Ether's writings of the Jaredites. We get many things relative to the works of darkness and allusions to, if not the details about, the secret combinations and the oaths that men have entered into from the time of Cain and Abel. Cain, entered into a combination with the devil that he might obtain that which Abel had, and he sought for gain, and he did it in a secret way, and he became, the first to consort with or conspire with the devil. And so because this record has so much about works of darkness and about secret combinations, if not the details of the oaths and the particulars of the covenants that were made among those who enter into these particular secret agreements. Because there's so much of that in the Book of Mormon, I think people get the impression from the Book of Mormon that it is either of God or of the devil, because it speaks so much of Christ, right? The whole book is about Christ. And yet there's this really strong element warning us, cautioning us against entering into, and again, in a latter day, works of darkness, and specifically secret works of darkness, those types of things that would have been recycled from these ancient times, like among the Jaredites, or even earlier than that, and have these ancient works of these oaths and covenants that are conspiracy with the devil to come into the modern context and begin to operate in the modern, because this leads to the overthrow of liberty, for one thing. This leads to the overthrow of civilizations. This is how the Jaredites fell as a civilization. This is how the Nephites collapsed, and ultimately ultimately were annihilated by these same principles, entering into these agreements, these conspiratorial agreements with the adversary. In fact, he's the founder of these things. He's the instigator of these things. It's about getting gain. We learn about the motivations behind these secret combinations and these secret works of darkness. But see, this record, these 24 gold plates, have much to say about the works of darkness among the Jaredites, as well as the agreements that were made. Although again, Alma says the details of that should not be made known, only that they were, only their sins and their abominations should be made known, but not the particulars of these oaths and these covenants and these agreements in their particulars. And so these 24 gold plates, the plates of ether, there's an interesting and rich story being told about these plates throughout the course of the Book of Mormon, from our definitions of seership and what it means to look into interpreters, that we might translate records of ancient date, to their first translation and the reactions of the people of the realm of Mosiah, the Zarahemla, the people of Zarahemla, and their reactions to these newly translated records, these 24 gold plates. And then later, of course, Alma's cautionary discussions in Alma 37 and his teachings to his son Helaman about these things. And then later, Moroni's fascinating use of the record by abridging it radically and not really giving us much of the record, because he has so much to say about the latter days and how these things connect and have application to the modern day of the Gentiles, which would be our day. And then there's this promise, and again, the exact relationship between the vision given to the brother of Jared in his writings and the 24 gold plates, which were written by Ether, a history of the Jaredites from Ether. It's not entirely clear to me exactly whether that great vision was found on the 24 gold plates, or if there were additional records, or if in some sense that language that was on the 24 gold plates was particularly concise in its capacity to convey much through very few characters. But in any case, we have, because of Moroni's instrumentality and transcription, we do have a sealed portion to look forward to that will be opened when our faith becomes like unto the brother of Jared. But for now, we have the Book of Mormon. It's been given to us, We have already lost a part of it, but hopefully we'll retain and obtain that Book of Lehi in a future day as well. But we have the Book of Mormon. It is a trial of our faith, and if we exercise interest and faith and learn what we can from it, it will help us. It'll help us in many ways, but it will also prepare us to receive greater things than these, because these things we have are just the beginning of what the Lord hopes to reveal to us. And these 24 gold plates, again, have this really fascinating history. So I thought today it would be fun to go over that and kind of talk about the ways in which that record is discussed over the course of the Nephite record. So there's a lot of complexity in the Book of Mormon. A lot of plates are referenced. There's not only 4 sets of plates either. There are other plates that are mentioned, like the plates of Jacob, the plates of Zenith. There's all kinds of complexity to the book. But on top of that, there's this really fascinating level of how these things apply to us and how we need to understand the story and the warnings and the cautionary tale of the Jaredites and the cautionary tale of the Nephites. These tragic stories of civilizations brought to their knees because they began to not only tolerate these things, but embrace these things, and ultimately these works infiltrated and became even something the righteous took upon themselves, and the righteous, were affected by these things, and many of them entered into these things, unfortunately. So this is all cautionary for us and very interesting. Thank you for your time. Hopefully that was useful and interesting to track the 24 gold plates through the record and some of the context around those plates. Thank you.